Hi guys, thank you for joining me for another video. This project is a little back to front in that I didn't actually tape the process of me making my own paint this first time around, since it was quite messy and I had no idea about the accurate ratios, so it took a while for me to get it right. But I did film my first time using my handmade paint. So now that I have a better idea of what I'm doing, I'm going to go back and actually tape the steps that I had taken to actually make this graphite paint. So a little more about what I did. I have a jar of graphite powder that I bought ages ago and which I just don't use. It's best for blocking in large areas when working in graphite, but I generally don't work larger than say 9 by 12. So for the most part, the whole jar just sat in my studio gathering dust. Now, as you may have seen from my art supplies from Myra video, I bought myself a box of pigment powder which I want to use for egg tempera and for making my own water paint. So this idea has been in my head for a while, but I wanted something monochromatic that I could use for studies. And really, I think in that case, if I don't want to use straight black, graphite is actually the best alternative. So I grabbed some tools I had lying around and made this graphite paint using the graphite powder, gum arabic, ox gall, honey, and distilled water. So I only used a palette knife to mix the ingredients because I don't actually have the glass muller, but this worked to my benefit in the end because the paint granules were quite large, so the paint granulates really beautifully. It took a very long time to get the ratios right. If you add too much pigment and not enough gum arabic, the pigment will just rub off, and if you add too much gum arabic and not enough pigment, then your paint is going to come out quite shiny. So yeah, I just had to swatch paint as I went along and play around with the ratios until I ended up getting the perfect mixture. So the paint has some features that make it different from some of the mass-produced paint tubes that I've tried. So the first characteristic is that because I did make it by hand, it granulates a lot. I think if you use the glass muller, you can probably reduce that granulation. It's also not very liftable. I think that's probably to do with just the nature of graphite pigment. I think, again, if I mull it more finely, it might be less staining, so I'll have to try that in the future. But to be honest, the characteristics made the sketch easier to complete because usually I would worry about lifting my underlayers. So for me, it's a bit of an advantage in this case that I could just layer my sketch quickly and not worry about what's happening underneath. So it's not likely that I would want to lift paint off myself. So yeah, I didn't really mind that it was quite staining. It did take some work to get the very darkest value because graphite isn't black. It's a warm grayish color, but it wasn't too bad. It re-wet quite quickly because of the honey that I added. So I didn't fight it, or it didn't fight me, I suppose. I think what I love about this idea of making my own paint is that with sufficient quantity of the graphite powder and a large enough brush, I could whip out a sketch so much quicker than I could if I was just using graphite pencils. but it still really looks like it's done with pencil, especially, you know, if I'm cross-hatching with my brush, but it's just so much quicker. So I think once I've perfected my recipe, I may give away some half pans to some fellow artists just to get their point of view. And I'm also wondering how many brands actually create this paint. I know that Daniel Smith, I think, has a graphite paint, and I think I have used it. It's much finer than mine, but it didn't strike me as very special, the Daniel Smith one. I think mine's a bit more unpredictable, but then I will mostly use it for sketches, so maybe that's actually a good thing. So do let me know if you've used a graphite paint and what your thoughts are, and actually let me know if you would like to try a graphite paint. I actually think it's a brilliant idea, and I have since used it a few times in my sketchbook. I only made a couple of half pans, but in a couple of weeks I might try again. But I will definitely get you a video showing you exactly what I did and what my ratios are, and then perhaps you can try it yourself. So thank you very much for watching, and if you do have any questions now, just leave me a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks guys!